Hi everybody, welcome to Board on the Floor. I'm Chris, and in today's video, it's the first time on the channel that we are going to actually go through a prototype game. This is a Kickstarter game that launched this week, and I managed to get my hands on the prototype, so I want to go through and talk about the rules and how it works for solo gameplay. The game is called Quests and Cannons, The Risen Islands, and it's designed by Eric and Shannon Geller, and published by Short Hop Games. This is their first game, and as you can see from what's on the table, this is a really interesting looking game. The board itself is a kind of modular, I'm gonna call it a tri-hex tile map. The frame here holds all of these map tiles in place, and if you take a look at the rule book, you'll see the many different layouts for the different types of gameplay modes, and how you could set up the map differently for each one. And on the front of every map tile, you'll usually have the island, and the different types of water terrain. If you take a look at the back of these map tiles, this is impassable terrain. So you could even make the map even more challenging by flipping some of them over, because that would be an area that you actually can't go through. We have Treacherous Sea, which is the area with the octopus tentacles. Then we have Stormy Sea, which is like the darker water. And then we have just like calm waters here. And so as you travel over these different areas, it costs more points. So traveling through calm waters costs you 1 point. Traveling through stormy seas costs you 2 points. And then if you land on treacherous sea, what you actually do is you roll, and if you get a 4 or higher, you could then move 1 space in any direction. So sometimes it actually is a chance that you should be taking in order to move more, because at the beginning of the game, you won't be able to move as much as you will further on when you get more sails and you kind of like maybe improve your ship. So if we just take a look at the board and we're gonna set the game up, the first thing we gotta do is put out the frame. And the frame is made up of 3 kingdoms. So it's the wider area here, there, and there. And then we have 3 outposts. There's Boulder Point Stronghold, Windshear Retreat, and Scrollbound Librarian. And so the outposts are where you'll be able to dock your ship, and then as a free action, either upgrade it, repair your ship, you could buy ammo, and then even sell off some of your resources. But at the outposts as well, this is where you will be completing certain quests. Some quests will require you to drop off resources at an outpost. Other quests may ask you to go to a trading post. And some quests, of course, might make you return to your kingdom, which is your starting spot. Once we have set up the frame of the board, that's when we decide the type of game we're going to play. And by using the rule book, there's a quick setup guide on how we should place the tri-hex tiles. So this is the setup for 2 versus 2 versus 2. And how that would work in this game is it's teams. So you would actually be playing 2 players against 2 players against 2 players. But this is the same map they suggest for solo play. And I've set up the board, and I'm going to be going through the rules on how it works if you're going to be playing solo with this game, because that's how I play it. And so first thing we do, we're going to set up the main section of the board, place all the tiles accordingly. And if you take a look at each of the map tiles, you'll notice there's a number. So it goes from 1 to 7. And in the rule book, it explains exactly the placement, meaning not just where it goes on the map, but how it's going to be placed and rotated. Once we manage to set up our section, we'll move on to the other sections. And then there's going to end up being 3 spots left over, and that's when we're going to drop in our trading posts. In the solo game, how it works is we're going to take 3 of the champion tiles, and these are going to represent our enemies. So we are going to be going up against 3 different enemies who will be on the board trying to get in the way of us completing our quests and achieving our goals and winning the game. So we set up 3 enemies. Each will get 2 cannons, 5 damage tokens, and 4 ammo. Those are the 4 black dice. After we set up the 3 enemies, we move on to getting our card decks ready. And so at the top of the board, I put the loot deck. And then to my left here, I have the map clue deck, and then the quest deck. Around the board, I'm going to start setting up the resources. We have the 3 different types of coins. They come in 5, 3, and singles. Then we have our crates and our cannons. So as you're going through the game, you could actually upgrade your cargo holds. And that means you actually get more space to carry different resources. So that's what the crates represent. And then of course, your cannons are how you can attack. And then we have the ammo dice. And then the 5 types of resources are gems, spice, canvas, lumber, and metal. And here you can see all the question marks on the board. These are our island feature tokens. And so we randomize them by shuffling them up and placing them on every single island. And when you actually land on one of these spaces, So you'll flip it over and you'll see which resource is actually available on the island and available for you to gather. And that's pretty much how we have the game board set up. The last part is going to be setting up our personal player board. These player boards are pretty awesome. They're my favorite type of player board. It's dual layered, so all the components fit in really nicely. And so if we take a look here, we just have a spot to put in our champion board. I've decided to play with Karis Thornfur, and Karis is a Dwunny. This is part of the, I guess, the tribes or races that are in Quests and Canon. And what I did read is that there's going to be multiple games coming out within this universe as well, which is really exciting. I love when they do different types of games within the same universe. So if they create like a trilogy of games, each one has different mechanisms in it and has different gameplay. So it's going to be interesting to see where this universe goes and the types of games that are going to come out next. So after we slide in our champion board, we take a look at the starting stats for this specific character. Every champion has different stats. So some might be better at exploration and sailing, some might be better at combat. So Karis Thornfur starts with 2 sails, 1 cannon, so he's not going to be really good at fighting. Or they, I don't know if this is male or female character, so I'll call them they. So they have 1 cannon, and then they have 2 cargo hold spots. So if you take a look, there's going to be 2 that are left empty, and the other 4 potential spots are going to be filled with those crate tokens. On the champion board, you'll also see the max for each of these elements. So Karis could only have a max of 3 sails, 2 cannons, and 5 cargo spots. So very good at sailing, very good at the import-export, but not so good at combat. Then you'll also see at the top here, this is how we count our action points. So there's a little clear marker here that you place on 3, and every round you get to perform 3 actions. Below that, you'll see there's a little slot for a +1 and a +2. Whenever you get into Treacherous Sea and you roll what's called the Traveler's Die, if you get 4 and above, then you actually get spit out in any direction you want. So you kind of like succeed at making your way through the Treacherous Sea. If you get 3 or lower, then you actually fail and you take 1 damage, but you get to take the die and place it either in the +1, or this is your second time you failed, +2 slots. And what that means is on the next roll, you get to add those additional numbers to your roll, and it might help you actually succeed. Then you have 2 ship slots, and these are for your upgrades. So whenever you get a loot card, if it's a ship equip card, that means you get to upgrade your ship when you go to an outpost, but you can only do it a maximum of twice. We'll also start the game with 5 ammo dice. That means we could actually fire our cannons 5 times, or possibly fire 5 cannons at the same time if we had them. But since we only have a max of 2, I'd only be able to spend 2 ammo each round of combat. And just like our enemies, we have a little ship marker with our character token in it. I'm just going to place it here for now. And then we start with 3 coins. I'm also going to keep 5 damage tokens close by because I only have 5 health in total. This is how the board would be set up for a solo game. I'm going to take my ship marker and I'm going to put it in the kingdom that's right in front of me. And there are 3 starting spots, but in solo, you actually have an entire kingdom. If you were playing with other people, your starting slot is kind of like your home base. So if you have a quest or you're gathering your map clues, you have to return them to your starting spot, and that would be exactly where you start. But for us, since we're in solo, we could return it to any of these 3 spots. At the bottom of my kingdom, you'll notice there's a counter here. It goes from 1 to 15. This is how we're going to be counting our prosperity. So there's these little markers. On one side, it's just kind of like a little illustration, but then on the other side, there's a +15. So in certain games, you could actually make it more challenging by having to go up to either 20, 25, or even 30 prosperity if you want. So if you ever make it to the end of the track, you just flip it and start over at the beginning again. And in the solo game, we're going to start off going up to 15 prosperity. And I'm also going to use one of the counters on the other kingdom because we only have 15 rounds to accomplish our goals. So that is how the solo game will play. Within 15 rounds, we will perform our actions. The enemy ships may move or not, may attack us or not, depending on where we are. And we will count down our rounds using this marker up here in this red track. With the board set up and everything ready to start playing, the last thing is getting the enemies onto the board. And we do that by using the map clues. But before we start off, one thing we have to do is remove the map clues for the 3 closest islands to our kingdom. So for me, it's Honeycomb Isle, Lettuce Sands, and Blossom Scary. So I gotta go in here and I'll take a look. Here's Lettuce Sands. I'm gonna place it here. Blossom Scary and Honeycomb Isle. Honeycomb Isle. So the reasoning behind that is that none of the enemies will start right in front of us because they would then pretty much attack us immediately. And so it gives us an easier start off to our game, and I should shuffle these too. An easier start, and it keeps our home base kind of safe. I will flip a card for each enemy. And depending on what the map clue is for, which island the map clue is for, that's where our enemies are going to start. So we have Lotus Gulf, which is right here. We have Conch Atoll, which is over here. And then we have Condor's Flight. Ooh, pretty close to us. So after we do that, we shuffle these back into the deck, and then we're going to take our first map clue. So as you're playing, you start off with a map clue. Depending on the champion you've selected, they may have different goals set out from the beginning of the game. So Karis Thornfur has to go out and complete 6 map clues and return them back home. Other characters have to sink 2 enemy ships, and some have to complete 3 heavy quests. So those are the quests with the dark blue background. And so Karis has to go out and try and complete as many map clues as possible. So my first map clue, I gotta head out to Orchid's Vale, spend 1 coin to complete this map clue, and then I could gain, I got a new map clue, and I could gain 1 prosperity or 1 loot card. So if I take a look, Orchid's Vale is right here. And so now that everything is set up, I got my character ready, I got all the enemies on the board, I can start to talk about how the game actually plays. And so each round, we get 3 actions. Of these 3 actions, we could obviously move, we could explore, we could gather. And so if we're on an island, we could gather the resources that are on that island. If we're on an outpost, we get some free actions like I had mentioned before. And if we're on a trading post, we also get some free actions. And at the trading post, we could actually just trade some resources for other resources. We could sell off some of our loot cards or map clue cards. I'm just gonna play a couple of rounds to show you how certain things work. So I will explore, I will get into some combat, and I will hopefully complete some map clues, maybe even a quest. We'll see how it goes. And to start off, I'm gonna spend my first action point, and I'm gonna move, and I'm gonna try and avoid the enemies. So the way the enemies work is they have kind of like a line of sight up to the number of cannons they have. So right now they all have 2. That means if I end my turn within 2 spaces of any of these enemies, they will move directly for me and attack me. So I want to try to avoid them. But there are some rules that are going to mitigate that as we go through the rounds. When we hit round number 10 and round number 5, we're going to pull out 3 more map clues for them, and they will start shifting around on the board. And so we may think we are safe by kind of like sailing around them, but at a certain points of the games, they kind of start shifting, and who knows where they're going to land. They might land directly on top of us. One thing when it comes to movement is you get 1 movement point. So that means you get to move 1 space. But if you have some sails, you could spend them, and on the same movement action, move 1 extra space, 2 extra space, 3 extra spaces, depending on how many sails you have. So right now, if I wanted to move to Lettuce Sands, I could spend only 1 action point and spend a sail and move twice. I could also spend the action point and a sail and move twice onto this treacherous sea, and then take my chance and see if it could spit me out. Then I could go right to Paradise Enclave, which is the island here. And that is kind of a way to help you move a bit faster, though it's going to be based on luck. But let's try it out. So I spent my action point. I'm going to spend 1 sail, so I get to move 2 spaces. And then I'm going to roll my traveler's die, and I got a 4, which means I succeeded. So it's going to spit me out into Paradise Enclave, where I'm going to take a look at what resource we have. It's metal. You get 1 coin the first time you kind of discover an island. But the next player that will go on it, of course, me. But I mean, in a multiplayer game, the second time someone would land on the island, they wouldn't get that 1 coin. But every time you land on an island, you do get a quest card. And so our first quest is Rite of Passage. Raiders have been attacking the shipping lanes, making it hard to get through, so the Merchant Guild is hiring private ships to make the deliveries. Objective, deliver some spice and canvas to either Boulder Point Stronghold or Scrollbound Librarium, and I'll get 2 prosperity, 1 loot, and 3 coins. Now, if I wanted to, I could spend another action point and gather some metal and just have it in my cargo hold in case I needed it, or I could just move on. I think I will gather it just because, so I'll spend that action point and I will take 2 metal, and at any point if you gather other resources, you could just replace the ones you already have in your cargo bay. One thing about resources is when you make your way to an outpost, you can actually use them to upgrade your ship. So metal will let you upgrade your cannons, lumber will let you upgrade your cargo slots, and canvas will allow you to upgrade your sails. So it kind of makes sense to just kind of get some resources as you're moving around if you plan on upgrading. Now, like I mentioned before, so each of these have a maximum of what they could be upgraded to depending on the champion you selected. But I'm going to gather some metal, so maybe I could get at least 1 other cannon. Or if I get a quest that requires the metal resource, I'll already have it. I won't have to travel back to get it. And so those are 2 action points. I'm going to do my 3rd action point and spend my 2nd sail to do 1, 2 movements, and I'm on Orchid's Vale. I get to discover it, and it has gems, which is cool. And I get my 1 coin. Now that I'm at Orchid's Vale, I can complete my map clue, but I have no more action points left. So the next thing I have to do is take a look at the map. Are any enemies within 2 spaces of me? 1, 2, no. 1, 2, no. This one's too far, this one's too far. So I'm actually safe right now on the island, and I have to reset my action points, refresh my 2 sails, and then we move on to the next round. So we move down to round 14, and I'm going to start spending my first action point to complete my map clue. So I have to spend a coin, and then I get 1 prosperity or 1 loot. I'll pick a prosperity. And now that I've completed my map clue, I get a new one. Then I'm just going to place it over here. That'll be my completed pile. My next map clue is while at Birdie Cove. So let's see where Birdie Cove is. Birdie Cove is over here. It's still a safe area because it's far enough away from this enemy. And so next I can move to Birdie Cove. Now, I don't have to just go around the map and try and complete these map clues. I could also be completing quests as I'm doing it, exploring and getting into combat. Now, depending on how you want to play the game, you might just want to accomplish what your character's end goal is, which is, for me, getting map clues. Or you could just have fun with it and do whatever you want. But now that I've completed my first map clue, let's see. I also am supposed to get a quest. I forgot to get the quest. Chamber of Songs and Soul. The Archmaestros have convened at the Librarium to sing of the coming age, but they still need gems and incense to hone their voices and fine metal strings to carry them. So in this one, I actually need 3 resources, but I only have 2 cargo holds. So I don't think I'd ever be able to accomplish this goal unless I upgraded my ship. So I do have some metal, which would allow me to upgrade my cannon. So maybe I'm going to make my way to the outpost in this round to upgrade my cannon, and then I'll get into combat to show you how that plays out. So on my next action point, I will now move 1, 2, actually I'll spend both of my sails, 3. And then I'll just move 1 to the outpost, which is my last action point. Outposts, trading posts are safe. So if there are enemies close by and you can make it to one of those areas, try and do so, because then you're going to be safe for the round. And now that I'm here, I could actually complete a free action, which is going to be to upgrade my ship. To upgrade your ship to add another cannon, you got to spend 1 metal resource and 3 coins. So I do have the 1 metal resource. I'm going to spend that. And I do have the 3 coins. So I'm going to spend that. And I get another cannon. Now I've maxed out my cannons at 2, but that means now when I get into combat, I can roll 2 dice every time to attack, which increases my chances. And so we're going to end this round. I will refresh my action points, refresh my sails. And in this next round, I'm going to also move down the counter. And in the next round, I'm going to get into some combat so I can show you how that plays out. So I'm going to make my way over to this enemy who is Bothoth Dreamseer. And I have to make my way through some stormy sea and treacherous sea to get to them. So my first action point, I'm going to also use a sail. Stormy Sea costs 2 movement points, so I have to spend that sail to get into it. And now I could either go into the treacherous sea and take my chance and roll a die. But if I get 3 or lower, I'm going to take a damage right before I'm going to go into combat, which probably isn't a good idea. So maybe instead, well, I think I do have to move into that treacherous sea. So let's just do that. Spend an action point here. And of course, if luck is on my side and I get out, I can spend my next action point for combat. And I got a 5. Very lucky. And that'll spit me out. And I'm going to move over here. Now, of course, I get to discover this island, flip this for metal, get my 1 coin and my quest. The Artisans Guild. With expeditions leaving for the islands daily, guild members are working to provide them with equipment, but supplies are running low. Deliver metal and canvas to either Windshear Retreat or Scrollbound Librarium. Get 2 prosperity, 1 loot, and 2 coins. This one isn't too hard. I have 3 quests, and the maximum for quests or for map clues in your hand is 3. So you could, of course, complete map clues and put them over there into your completed pile. But in your hand at any one time, the maximum you can have of each is 3. And now with my last action point, let's get into some combat. So when it comes to combat, it's all based on the number of cannons you have. I have 2 cannons. That means I could use 2 ammo to launch cannonballs at the enemy ship. You could only use a cannon once per turn. So if I would fight against this enemy and then I would wish to encounter another enemy, if I've already spent my cannons, I can't do it. I don't have to use every cannon in combat. I can save some for other enemies, but since I only have 2 cannons and there's no other enemy close by, I'm just going to use both of them. See if I can do any damage to this ship. Now, the way combat works, for every 4 you get, so for every 4 pips on the die you roll, that counts as 1 hit. So right now, I just got 4. I rolled 2 dice. The max I could get, of course, would be 2 6s, which would be 12, and I could hit 3 times. But I rolled 2 dice, and I only got a 4. That means I did 1 damage to both of them. So I'm going to take the damage token here, put it on their first heart. And because I landed a hit, I actually get 1 prosperity. But I exhausted my 2 cannons, so I'm going to flip those over to the exhausted side, which shows like a cannonball coming out of the front of the cannon. And I've also spent this ammo. So I'm going to put it back here into the supply, and I have 3 ammo left, which isn't bad because I only have 2 cannon. I could always buy more ammo at an outpost, so it's not that bad. But for now, I've ended my turn. I have no more action points left. And because I'm on the same tile as an enemy ship, they get to attack me. So they have 2 cannons, so that means they get to use 2 ammo, and they just refresh their ammo every time. They don't actually spend it like me. So let's see how much damage they do. So they got 7, which isn't bad because that means they only hit me for 1. If they would have gotten 8, they would have hit me twice. But now I have 1 damage, and we return their ammo, and we refresh our cannons and our sails. And we move down to the 12th round. So there you've kind of gotten a good idea of how the game works. This is how solo play is. Now if you were playing in multiplayer, it would be different because you'd be going against a real person. But in the solo game, as you start moving around the board, there are times when you are going to have to get into some dangerous situations because of the map clue you have or the quest you're trying to complete. Or of course, if you have to sink 2 ships. So if your champion's goal is to sink 2 enemy ships, you'd have to keep fighting until you would accomplish that, or you can't actually win the game. And with someone like Karis Thornfur and only having a maximum of 2 cannons, it would be quite challenging because they'd have to keep going and going and going multiple times to get an enemy ship down to 5 damage. When you actually defeat an enemy, they go off the board, but only for the single round. So when that round is over, you flip a map clue, find out where they're going to be going, place them back on the board. And because you've defeated an enemy, they all now get stronger. They would all get 1 more cannon added to each of their champion boards, which means now if you're within 3 spaces of them, they can head right for you and attack you. So as you get further along in the game, if you do manage to accomplish certain things, like defeating an enemy, it makes them stronger and it makes the game more challenging. And as I had mentioned before, once you get down to round number 10 and round number 5, you take out 3 more map clues and those enemy ships just start scattering into different areas. So it increases the challenge. It makes the gameplay a little bit more tense because you think you're, taking a smooth ride, working your way around the board, avoiding all the enemies, but now they might be landing directly on top of you. And sometimes all 3 of them could just be in the area surrounding you and attack you at the same time, and you get sunk. And I had played one game just yesterday where I had completed the 6 map clues. When you complete your map clues, you've actually just completed the journey to discover them, and then you got to return them back home to kind of like share them with your people. And so I was making my way back to my home starting spot here when I hit round 5. The ships scattered around to different areas and landed directly on top of me, attacked me, and my ship sunk. And when your ship sinks, you lose all your map clues, you lose all your cargo, you lose half of your coins. And so I had just spent 10 rounds achieving my goals and lost them all in a single combat. So I tried and I came close to gathering them again, but I wasn't able to do it. So you got to be smart. You also have to be prepared. The one thing about this game is you can't just start sailing around willy-nilly without kind of making sure that you have enough cannons, and you also kind of repair your ship when you have a chance. So making your way back to the outpost to make sure you repair, using the trading posts to trade some of your cargo, because it makes it easier sometimes if you're looking for something like a canvas and you haven't discovered any islands that have a canvas there. You can trade at a trading post for it, so it does make it easier to use that. But be sure you trade, be sure you repair, be sure you upgrade. If you get loot cards that allow you to upgrade your ship, do it. If you are going to be fighting, make sure you get enough cannons, make sure you have enough ammo, and repair when you can, because sometimes you'll hit that treacherous sea and you'll roll the traveler's dice and you'll get a 3 or lower and you'll take a damage. The worst part is when you sink in treacherous sea, you lose 3 prosperity. There are so many elements in the game that could actually kind of really set you back quite a bit. So you got to be aware of all of them. And so the first couple of games you're going to play, of course, you're not going to understand the best strategies to move around, and you're not going to understand just the types of threats that are going to be presented. But now that I've got a couple games under my belt, I'm starting to understand how to play the game better and make it to the end, and I finally won. The rules are quite straightforward, and the gameplay is really fun, and especially with solo, because of the way the game mitigates the possibilities of kind of like avoiding enemies or just like hitting all your goals and coming back and accomplishing them very easily. The 10th round, the 5th round, resetting the board. Of course, if you sink a ship, the enemy's getting stronger. So there's a lot of elements to it that will keep the game challenging, even if you're playing by yourself. So I've really enjoyed it. I like how all of the exploration and combat mechanisms work. I find like the rolling the dice to get 4 pips and then that's a hit. It makes it feel like sometimes you're gonna shoot your cannons and you just totally miss. So I find the combat was really cool. Now, of course, the enemies are really challenging because if they get to you, they could do a lot of damage. They could do a lot of damage really fast. And sometimes just because of luck, you can't get away, or, flipping that map clue card, and when they get rearranged, they're gonna land right on top of you. So it's fun and challenging. I can imagine if I got my kids down here to play it with me, it wouldn't be so hard for them to actually pick it up as well. And I think it's interesting that there are so many different modes. You could have, of course, player versus player. Then there's also a co-op mode that's very similar to the solo mode. And then there's the team mode too, where it can be 2 versus 2, or 3 versus 3, I guess, or even 2 versus 2 versus 2. So if you take a look at the rule book, which is available on the Kickstarter, you can see the different possibilities with this game and how you can increase the challenge or even modify the gameplay for multiplayer or for solo mode. This has been the setup and the solo rules for Quests and Cannons: The Risen Islands. It's the first game published by Short Hop Games, currently on Kickstarter, so there will be a link down below that'll take you right to that page. And you still have about 20 days left if you're interested in pledging. There are 3 or 4 different pledges. You can even get your hands on a prototype if that's what you wanted. And this is the prototype right here. It's really impressive. The components are all wood. The game board is wood, the hex tiles, the player boards, these little ships. If you like exploration, gathering, dice rolling, hand management, combat. This game kind of hits all of those elements. It's kind of unique in all the games I've played so far, and I've only been doing this for, like I think 6 or 7 months now. I find this has been one of the most unique games I've played. I really love this board. It's gorgeous, and I can only imagine it's going to be even nicer when the final version comes out. Now, I've never played a prototype before, but so far this prototype is extremely impressive. I'm really excited that I got to get my hands on it because this is the first time that a publisher has sent me a game to play before it's even come out. And it's really exciting to know that it's possible to get your hands on a prototype on a game like this before it actually heads to Kickstarter or even comes out for retail. So it's been a cool couple of days getting to know the game, interacting with the publishers and seeing the Kickstarter launch and knowing that I have it right in front of me while it's live on there right now. I've actually played the game before the Kickstarter came out, and it's never happened before, and it's actually kind of exciting because then I could see as it gets funded, and it got fully funded already. It was funded within an hour and a bit. So the game is happening. It will be released next, I think it's December 2022 is when they're going to be fulfilling the Kickstarter. I'm not too sure when it's going to make its way to retail, probably a little bit after that. But this is really cool. It's a cool experience to be part of the story that is going to become Quests and Cannons. Now, whether or not this game explodes once it's released, it's already getting a lot of positive attention, a lot of positive feedback. If it looks like the type of game you're into, be sure to check out the Kickstarter. There's a lot of cool different pledge levels and add-ons and stuff like that. You can actually get a play mat, which is really nice. So it's kind of like a quick start play mat. So I think it always has a certain setup of the game board, but with the hex tiles, you can always just lay them on top of it and play it however you like. But I'm very curious about getting an actual playmat for a game. I haven't gotten a playmat yet. This might be the game I kickstart that I pledge for a playmat. Quests and Cannons, The Risen Islands. Be sure to check out the Kickstarter, and if you have any questions for me, please leave them in the comments below. And check back on the channel because the next few days I am going to have a full solo gameplay of Quests and Cannons. But for now, I'll just say so long. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.